Today I want to talk about intentional action. And so I'm calling it, if not for joy's sake, then what in God's sake are you doing? And I want to argue that even things that seem obligatory, you can derive pleasure from it. And if you really pay attention, you do have a choice. And if you do things that are not for your own joy's sake, then what in God's sake are you doing? So we'll examine our intentions and be more mindful of what we're doing in every moment. Stick around. Every animal on the planet is pleasure seeking. I don't think we as humans are any different. But one of the things that's obvious to me is that there is a depth to pleasure. There's a kind of hedonistic pleasure at the surface level that the ego loves, and I would call that sinister pleasure. And then there's real joy in a deeper sense. Pleasure is usually related to some kind of fleshly craving. But it leaves you more. It leaves you wanting more. It's an addiction. And the ego is a kind of pleasure searching part of us that craves attention, craves highs, craves accolades, promotion, which you might call additives. And they're never quite enough, right? You have to do it over and over again. Now, what's funny about this is that joy doesn't get old either. One could argue that I'm making this video because of joy and love. And I have over 300 videos. Why do I keep doing this? Is that a pleasure-seeking thing? Am I seeking a thrill? See, I'm not seeking anything at all. I am complying with an urge. And one could say that the ego is urgent too. I mean, you don't think people in politics crave the attention they get? It's kind of a sinister pleasure to create trouble. But the spirit kind of does the same thing. A spiritual teacher could arguably be said to be causing trouble Anytime you open your mouth, you're going to cause trouble. Even Jesus said that, I didn't come to bring peace. If he came to bring peace, he would have been quiet. But he created a lot of trouble for himself by speaking up and pointing out hypocrisy. But the ego is just as hungry as the spirit. So one could say we're looking at depth of the same kind of energy. You have a shallow craving, which is a kind of hunger, and then you have a deep yearning to do something. One of them comes from a place of standing fulfillment. The other one comes from a place of standing craving. And they work like junk food. Like you know you're pleasure seeking if you have to have it and you must do it. And it always leaves you feeling empty. One could say the calling of the Spirit, which is a yearning to do something or to create, is a compliance with a deeper impulse. So one is, at the pleasure-seeking level, you're looking at animalistic dopamine, adrenaline hits. At the spiritual level, you're dealing with kind of a hit, a ping, but it feels less urgent. It's deeper and more contemplative, yet it still feels like an urge. You know? It just feels like a deeper place in you when you become creative. And then a spiritual urging, or something on a deeper level, has no intention to harm, even though you kind of know it can. People could misinterpret the words, think of you as some kind of heretical woo-woo teacher, and criticize you for simply sharing what's natural. And the ego naturally craves. Do you see where I'm kind of stuck here? Because it sounds like the spiritual world is the physical world bumped down a few notches. Because you hear spiritual teachers say things like spiritual discontent, spiritual longing. Well, the ego is a superficial kind of craving, longing, need, biological. And you can derive pleasure from the physical world. And you can derive a deep, satisfying, peaceful, fulfilling urge to create something meaningful. The difference in, say, a deep creative urge and a superficial egoic craving, the main difference, I think, is that you don't really care about the outcome. You don't care what people think. You do it because it heals you. It relieves you of the pressure that builds from within. The ego is never relieved. The ego never feels that sense of fulfillment. It's like eating salty, greasy Chinese food and then you're starving 30 minutes later. A spiritual gift or a spiritual urging or something like that can satisfy you for a long time. And it kind of keeps giving. Like I've said before, I can go back and watch some of my videos and be admonished and edified. So it has a replenishing quality to it when it's a spiritual urging. But even on a biological level, what I find interesting about eating and sex and nature walking and listening to good music, is that these are biological needs, but yet they're very enjoyable. We can derive joy in the physical world. But some people are insatiable. They don't know how to derive the right kind of fulfilling joy out of the physical world. They don't know how to select and dial in the right kind of pleasure. Now, on the physical world, on the physical dimension, the meter peaks out. Like, okay, for example, if you're watching, you have experienced the 5 senses of being a human being. And you have experienced the extremities of those 5 senses. In other words, you've been as happy as you'll ever be. You've been as miserable as you'll ever be. You've been as sad as you'll ever be. You've been as stuffed as you'll ever be, and you've probably been as hungry as you'll ever be. Unless we have some, God forbid, famine or something like that. So we've experienced the physical world already. An orgasm is an orgasm. There's no orgasm that, like, I'm done. I don't need to have another orgasm. It's a kind of repeated thing. You got to do it again and again and again, right, to get that dopamine hit. The creative act, or what might one say is the act of the spirit, is simply more thoughtful. It's not compulsive. It comes in waves, and sometimes you don't want to do it. Like, I'll go for weeks without making a video. Or when I was writing my first book, I went maybe 4 or 5 months and didn't touch the thing. The spirit sort of moves non-linearly, and whenever it... And in many ways, it's just a bathroom urge. And everything's just a bathroom urge. To speak, to move, to do everything. So then one wonders, okay, a bathroom urge is uncomfortable, but it feels good. To release it. Sometimes when we release an egoic, pinned up comeback or a complaint, it doesn't feel good. You see? So when you're trying to derive pleasure, you just keep deriving more hunger. Joy is this baseline, ground level existence that doesn't come out of a guilty feeling for being wanting to be productive. You see? It feels like a natural release of something already joyful. Any kind of other pleasure is a hit, a fix. The dopamine loses its effect. But as a creative person, it's just joy upon joy. You see? It's just a derivation of peace which wants to be expressed in a deeper level. So we are dealing with 2 levels of the same thing. That's what the universe is. It's a shallowness that we discover depth in. It's one energy that vibrates really high at the top and it vibrates or undulates very slowly at the bottom in the depths. And I'm just asking that you explore the deeper derivation of pleasure, which is called joy. That's why it seems like the physical world is shallow and the spiritual world is depth. But there's only one world. And so everything in life has a vertical exploration to it. Pleasure, joy. Being okay, deep peace. Being somewhat satisfied, totally fulfilled. That's all. I'm just pointing you to the vertical. So if not for joy's sake, then why? Because everything is like that. You're seeking joy all the time. You're seeking pleasure. You're seeking comfort. If you seek it at a deeper level, it's more sustaining, more fulfilling, and less demanding. That's why we do it for joy's sake. At least I do. It's a longer sustenance. It keeps giving even in between, if you know what I mean. It's like good, nutritious food. It keeps giving. It keeps nourishing. And so you can be very productive without having to produce so much. That's the difference. And you simply do it because it's fun. Besides, it's hard to make an inner being out of anybody that's having fun anyway, right? So as you're contemplating your actions, think about it. Am I doing this out of boredom? Am I doing this out of anger? Am I doing this out of robotic repetition? Am I doing this because I'm addicted? Notice how your hand picks up the phone and starts scrolling, and you think, why am I doing this? Do we like social media? Do we enjoy? I do, because I specifically look for something. Before I open up anything on my phone, YouTube or the internet, I think, I need to look something up, because I was joyfully contemplating it. Then I use it as a tool. If something is using you, you're addicted to it. If you're doing something simply for joy's sake, you're free from it. And it's providing a fulfilling and sustaining release of something that wants to gently come from you. That's what doing it for joy's sake is. It's an exploration of the vertical, and everything has vertical dimension. There's some humans that seem deeper than others. There's some conversations that seem deeper than others. And there's some intentions that seem deeper than others. And that's for joy's sake. For God's sake, who knows? But for joy's sake, that's something we can relate to, right? And that's something we can pay attention to in every action that we're doing. We can derive a great deal of satisfying joy. So think about that as you observe your actions. If not for joy's sake, then what in God's sake are you doing? My name is Ryan. I hope you enjoyed these insights today, and they made you really think about your actions and what you bring forth into the world. Please check out my blog. It's called mymorningmotivator.com. And if you could go to my Amazon page and take a look at one of my books, I would appreciate it. Until then, we'll see you next time.